Hey everyone, welcome back to the Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's August 9th. It's Tuesday. We have 14 baseball games tonight. Big slate, lot to talk about. It's a really good slate for tournaments, but I think it's going to be a good slate for cash games as well. So I'm bringing in a cash game guy. How you doing, Derek?
I was doing better a little while ago before Coors was almost over, and I had 0 points out of Ian Desmond and Jonathan Lucroy. They are just terrible. Like, it's so tilting on nights in cash games where you play Coors and you just get nothing. Like, you need anything. You need not zeros and you're fine. And it's so tilting.
You know what's not tilting? Being a tournament player and seeing people get zeros from Coors. Not trying to tilt you even more, but so we were chatting a little bit before we got started, and I paid up for one bat today, Ian Desmond.
Ian Desmond, I don't believe in him this year. I think he's playing way over his head. I've played him twice in these perfect matchups, and both times I've gotten zeros, I was telling you, and it's just it's so annoying.
That's baseball, and you know it as well as anybody. It just happens, and we move on to the next day, and that's what we're here to do. If you guys haven't checked out our sponsor, FantasyDraft.com, if you enjoy the podcast Monday through Friday, they're the reason that we continue to do this Monday through Friday. They sponsor it. Use promo code GRINDERS. That way you guys get a 100% deposit bonus up to $600, and you get incentives here at Roto Grinders for Fantasy Draft for free for a year. So make sure you guys are checking them out. A lot of cash game action over there, so we'll mention some cash game plays. And we're going to get started here with Cleveland at Washington, Max Scherzer, Trevor Bauer. What's your thoughts on these two guys?
I mean, Scherzer is clearly the top option of the day. I really don't think there's an argument for anyone else. And then the decision just comes down to whether you want to pay up for him in your cash games. I mean, it's a Cleveland Indians team that is taking a pretty sizable park hit, and they're losing a DH coming into the National League. So either Carlos Santana or Mike Napoli is going to be sitting out today. So this is a very good matchup for Scherzer, but I don't know if it's quite good enough to be worth paying for. It's hard to tell this early.
I think I like Scherzer a lot more if Napoli sits. And I know that sounds crazy because of the splits, but Mike Napoli is one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now, and I think that's a massive bump for Scherzer if Napoli sits.
Yeah, Napoli's just been insane lately, so I can see where that would help Scherzer.
It's not the easiest matchup in the world against Cleveland. We do need to note that, this team, it's a very solid baseball team. They're fifth in WRC plus against righties this season, but like you said, they're getting a ballpark downgrade here. Scherzer's at home, and he has an offense behind him that should give him some run support here against Trevor Bauer.
Absolutely. The other thing kind of working against him is it does look like it's going to be very hot and very humid there today. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not convinced that he's a guy that you absolutely have to pay for, but he is a very good play.
He's the most talented, best pitcher on the slate. That doesn't mean he's the best DFS player on the slate.
Absolutely.
Trevor Bauer, any interest here?
No, I never have any interest in Trevor Bauer, really. He's so overrated. He's really not that good of a pitcher. He's basically average. Maybe, no, I'm not even going to say above average. He's average. I can see him for GPPs today because he is going into the National League. He is getting that park upgrade, but I'm not a big fan of him in general, and this is a dangerous Nats offense, like you said.
All right, let's talk bats in this game. Anybody from Cleveland that you'll play here against Scherzer?
No, definitely not in cash games. Even in GPPs, I think you'd be hard pressed to try and find anyone worthwhile here.
Yeah, I can't do it. Some of these guys are going to have that really cheap price tag, and if you want to take a one-off on a Kipnis at a weak second base position in a tournament, just hoping for a home run, I think that'd be the only guy because he's under 3K on FanDuel. So, I could see that, and that's just about it.
Yeah, that would be about it for me too.
Don't risk a lot of your bankroll doing that. It's very risky. Looking at the Washington side of things, this guy Daniel Murphy is pretty good at baseball, and he's proving to everybody how good he is at baseball this year.
Daniel Murphy is very good at baseball. He's also very expensive, though. Yeah. So I mean, as much as I don't like Bauer, I think he's overrated. He's certainly not a bad pitcher. So I don't think I'm going to be explicitly targeting him, especially with a guy as expensive as Murphy. But there's certainly upside, as like a one-off.
Sites that you have to play catchers. What's your thoughts on Wilson Ramos?
I like Ramos. I don't think he's as good as he's been this year. And so when you have to pay a price tag that basically implies that he's as good as he's been this year, he's not a guy that I almost ever play.
Yeah, there was I think it was last week or the week before last, where he was just right around that. He still is. He's 3,000 on FanDuel.
I play mostly DraftKings. On FanDuel, that's perfectly reasonable. On DraftKings, he's 5,000. On Fantasy Draft, he's 9,600.
Yeah, I saw that on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, so I was kind of getting behind you. And then I looked over on FanDuel real quick, and 3K, there's no reason not to play him in cash games at that price.
That is a good price, and the matchup against Bauer is a pretty solid one. So for 3K, I can definitely see that.
Let's see. Got to note that Bryce Harper Sunday was out of the lineup because of a neck. They didn't play on Monday. Be interesting to see if he's in the lineup and what the lineup looks like if he's out of the lineup. So any solid value guys that move up to the top of the order, just kind of pay attention. They would be definitely in consideration here.
Definitely could be.
San Diego at Pittsburgh. Luis Perdomo against Chad Ka.
Cool.
He is not cool. Let's just be honest.
No, he's not terrible, but he's not very good either.
Anytime you start a sentence by "he's not terrible," I just know that it's going to be a good day.
Yeah. I would imagine there's going to be some offense here. It's not a great environment for it, but the pitching is certainly easy to pick on.
Yeah, Perdomo is not terrible either, right? Like, I guess we can say that. Like, he's getting better, as this season starts to wrap up. The beginning of his outings were just awful, and he's been better.
Yeah, he's been better. He's not horrendous. I mean, this isn't a great matchup for him. I mean, Pittsburgh's not a great offense, but it's not a good park for strikeouts. I don't know. I would have a hard time playing either of these guys.
Yeah, I'm not playing them. I'm just saying I just don't know how much I really want to go out of my way to pick on these guys either.
And yeah, I would agree with you there. I don't really see any guys that I'm like willing to really jump on for cash games here. If there's one, it might be a guy like Ryan Schimpf, assuming he gets a good spot in the order. On FanDuel, he's still really cheap, so he would be maybe the one bet that I would be the most interested in here.
Well, you have your Schimpf, and I have my Alex Dickerson, and I feel like me and you are the only two people that like these guys, and they just continue to produce for us.
Absolutely. I mean, they're very good hitters, so you might as well keep riding them, especially if no one's going to own them.
I always talk about Will Myers as a one-off. I don't know if this is necessarily the spot that I want to play him as a one-off.
No, I don't think so either, especially on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, where he's one of the more expensive hitters of the entire slate. Like, I don't think this is the right spot.
Pittsburgh has been weak, and Polanco still dealing with a shoulder injury. If he's out of the lineup, can we continue to roster Matt Joyce?
I think we can. I don't know if this is necessarily the right slate for him because there is a ton of really good offense today, and he is a guy who tends to get pinch hit for a good amount. But I don't hate him as like a one-off today.
Oh, I miss the days that he was like almost free. Not free anymore.
No, not free anymore.
All right. Price kind of dictates everything when it comes to DFS. People look at matchups a lot, but man, price is so important. Is there anybody here from Pittsburgh that you like?
Not really. I mean, even a guy like Adam Frazier, he was kind of in play for a while when he was, in the 2000s and on DraftKings and in like the 4000s on draft. But his price is kind of getting up there too. Not really. Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of guys that I find their price tags appealing.
All right, first two games over. Now we can talk about offense. Tampa Bay at Toronto. Marco Estrada, Drew Smyly. Are you one of those people that like Marco Estrada?
I'm one of those people that don't think Estrada is as bad as everyone else thinks he is. I think he's a slightly above average pitcher, which in the grand scheme of the DFS community, I think it probably makes me someone who loves Estrada.
I think this is a good matchup for him, right?
This is a very good matchup for him. He's too expensive for cash games. He's 11.5 on DraftKings and 22,400 on draft. But for GPPs, like there's big upside here. It's, he's going to get a lot of run support. He's going to get some strikeouts against this Rays offense. And I really don't think he's a bad pitcher.
If you're not paying up for Scherzer on FanDuel, do you look at Estrada at 8,700?
For me, there would be another guy that I think you have to play if you're not playing Scherzer, and it's not Estrada. But Estrada would be probably my third option after Scherzer and this other guy that we're going to get to later.
I love the teaser. Love the teaser. Drew Smyly going into Toronto to face a right-handed heavy Blue Jays team. It pretty much sums it up, right?
It really does. I mean, I'm a Smyly fan in general, but he's really been struggling lately, and this matchup is terrible. I think he's going to get crushed today.
I think he's going to get crushed today, too. We'll start with Tampa bats. Is there anybody here that stands out to you for Tampa?
Not really, because I don't want to pick on Estrada. Like, I don't. I don't see any. Maybe a guy like Corey Dickerson. He's 2,800 on DraftKings, which, given that he's getting the platoon advantage, getting a park upgrade, I could see him for power because Estrada does give up some fly balls and potentially some home runs.
What's your thoughts on Kiermaier if he continues to hit in this 2 spot?
I like Kiermaier. He's pretty well priced too. I can see Kiermaier.
It's kind of where I was looking. I'm probably not going to end up on any Rays bats here, but I'm going to end up on some of these Blue Jays. And just overall looking at the slate, and you're the cash game guy, they're going to be really popular at these prices, right?
I would think they're going to have to be. I'm not going to – I think there's a lot of other good offensive spots today, so I probably will only have 1 or 2 of them, but there are some really nice prices here.
Yeah, Donaldson, 8,700 on draft, Joey Baptista, 8,100, even E5 at 92. Like, the 3 big bats cheap, and then you get Travis, who is just destroying the baseball right now, batting leadoff, and he's cheap enough to play.
Yeah, he's a little too expensive for me. I like his price on FanDuel a lot more. I think he's 2,800 there or something like that.
Ridiculous.
He's a little too pricey for me on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, but he is going to be one of the top second base plays today.
It's so ridiculous that they do not raise his price.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Like, this is a guy, just to put it in, listeners' perspective, he has over 18 FanDuel points in 4 of his last 5 games, and he has been 27 to 2,800 the last 5 games.
Oh. Yeah, that's insane.
All right, rant done. I like the Blue Jays stack here. I think it's a really viable stack, and no Coors Field, so you always look at Rogers Center for offense.
Yeah, there's going to be some offense here.
San Francisco at Miami. Matt Moore, Tom Kohler. Matt Moore with the Giants now. What's your thoughts on Moore here?
I think Moore is an interesting kind of cheap GPP play. Like he's kind of been off and on this year. He's looked really good at times. He's looked really bad at times. But I like him as a member of the Giants. I like him throwing to Buster Posey. AT&T Park, which I don't think he's had a game there yet. But the roof will be closed in Miami. It is, neutral-ish, maybe a slight pitcher's park. And I think there's some strikeout upside against Miami. So I don't hate him as like a GPP play that I'm guessing maybe is going to go under-owned because he's Matt Moore.
Yeah, the roof's always closed in Miami
Yeah, this time of year it's always closed. Earlier in the year we get it open, but this time of year it's always closed.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. It's so hot in Florida. You walk outside for 2 minutes and you start sweating. So I'd be shocked if it's open, but hey, who knows? If it is open and we get news about it, the bats projections are going to go crazy here.
Yeah. No, it's worth noting, though, because this time of year, it's hot everywhere. Like every pitcher that isn't under a roof today, basically, with a couple exceptions like Oakland or wherever else, the pitchers have to deal with the heat. And that's not good for pitchers. So a pitcher in a roofed game is going to have a leg up.
Tom Kohler here, any interest?
No, zero interest.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's spots that I'll pitch Kohler, and I talk about it on the podcast from time to time, but, those spots are against Philadelphia or Atlanta or some of San Diego. It's not against San Francisco.
And when he's not 8,100 on DraftKings, what is that price?
He's been pitching well, man. Double-digit fantasy points.
I guess so. All right.
No, I'm messing, man. Like
I know you are.
I remember the days that I could play him at like 5K, and if he got me double digits, I was so happy. Those days are gone. Bats in this game. We'll start with the Giants. Anything stick out to you here?
I mean, for some reason, I guess today it's partially because Kohler is so expensive, but like Buster Posey and Brandon Belt have been really cheap on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft for like a week now.
Yeah, Brandon Belt, my first fantasy draft play today. 3 days, or every day I give out 3 guys that I like on fantasy draft under 8K, and Brandon Belt at 7,600 against Tom Kohler. This is a really good price tag and a guy that I think you want to have in your lineups.
Yeah, he's first base is super deep. There's always a lot of options there, but he's definitely in consideration.
Yeah, but on draft you can play 5 first basemen.
That is an excellent point.
Yeah, it just some of these guys are really cheap, and like you mentioned Posey on DraftKings where you have to play a catcher, like you have to look at Posey in cash, right?
You do. There's another catcher that I really like today, but Posey has to be in consideration.
Marlins here against Matt Moore. Like if we're playing the Marlins, we're looking at Ozuna and Stanton, right?
Are we looking at Stanton? I mean,
I am.
We have to. I mean, it's Stanton against a lefty, but Stanton is just like Stanton was in Coors all weekend, and like I was so torn on whether to play him in Coors. Like that's how I feel about Stanton these days. And of course you play him, and he had a great series in Coors, but it's just he's a tough guy to roster these days.
He is, but he's still Stanton against the lefty, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, I'll sum it up for you. Stanton against the lefty. What are your thoughts here on Martin Prado?
Prado's never a guy that I don't think I've played Prado all year, especially because, I mean, today he's really expensive. He's 45 on DraftKings, close to 9 on draft. So, I don't know. He doesn't do enough. Like, he's a good contact hitter, but you don't pay that price for a contact hitter.
Yeah, you know, I don't hate him on FanDuel at 2,700, I guess. Like, you know,
I can see it more there maybe. Like that price is a little bit more in line with what he can actually do with a bat.
And you're really just hoping for a multi-hit game, you know, at that price. So I think he's definitely a guy. But then you come to the thing like, do you really want, you know, no home run upside from a guy at third base? So, you know, you got to kind of make your decisions there. Are you playing D Gordon at all any of these days?
I played him in Coors all the time. I don't think we're playing him today against a lefty who I think is pretty good at preventing steals. I have to double check that, but I don't think this is the right spot to play D.
Arizona at New York, taking on the Mets. Zach Greinke, Steven Matz. Greinke coming off the DL here. I haven't seen anything that says he's going to be on a pitch count, and everything that I've read says he feels like he's 100% healed. So unless we get news, kind of expect him to be his normal self here.
Yeah, I meant to pull up his minor league game logs before this started, and I forgot. So let me pull him up. He threw 83 pitches in his last rehab outing. So I would imagine there's going to be what's that?
He got shelled in his last rehab start.
Yes, he did. He gave up 5 runs in 5 innings, it looks like, and only went 83 pitches. So I don't know if maybe he threw a couple extra pitches in a bullpen session after that. But if he didn't, then I would think he's probably going to be capped under 100 pitches today.
And he's expensive on FanDuel. It's just a spot that we don't do it here. Like even on, you know, fantasy draft at 21.6, like I just feel like that's too expensive.
I haven't played Greinke all year, and I don't plan on it. I don't think he's that good. I mean, he's a good pitcher, but he's not a great one. He's so overrated. He doesn't have that many strikeouts. He throws to a terrible catcher. Like, I can't endorse Greinke today or ever.
Steven Matz against Arizona pique your interest at all?
It does in a GPP because it's super risky. Like, he didn't look good at all his last time out, and you have to wonder if the elbow plays a part in that. Like, he's a guy that's perpetually going to be a risk while he's pitching through this. But it is a good matchup. You know, Arizona takes a big park hit coming from Chase to City. And even though you prefer to face them with right-handed pitching, there's definite strikeout upside here. So I like him for GPPs, especially because he's very inexpensive. He's, I don't know, what's it look like? More than 2K cheaper than Greinke on DraftKings, like 4K cheaper on Fantasy Draft.
Yeah, it's really close to that, a little bit over 4K. But yeah, like, so Steven Matz gets a Diamondbacks team who strikes out 22% of the time against lefties this season, but they're fourth in WRC plus. So I think your call as far as the upside goes is right, but don't go out there and roster Matz in 100% of your lineups because this could be a spot that he could get shelled in as well.
Absolutely. That's going to be a risk with Matz the rest of the year, I think.
Let's talk bats in this game. We'll start with Arizona here. You know, it's really the same suspects, right? It's Gene Segura, it's Paul Goldschmidt.
Yeah. I mean, it's, maybe Wellington Castillo is not even that cheap. Otherwise he would be. But this is kind of one of those plays where you're not going to do it in cash games, but you can definitely put together a nice right-handed Arizona stack for GPP, on the chance that Matz is, not himself today and he just gets lit up.
Yeah, I'm not against that. Like, you're doing it more as a hedge stack or something along those lines, but I'm not against it. And Yasmani Tomas, like, you want to talk about hot hitters, man? This guy is on fire right now.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to pay for it. He's not that good of a hitter. Like, I don't know. We have very different takes on this sort of thing. I think. Like, I will never pay for a hot streak, especially because you actually have to pay for it. Like, especially on a dynamic pricing site like DraftKings or Fantasy Draft, and I will never chase that.
Yeah, 3,200 on FanDuel though. I'll play him over there.
Yeah, even over there, I don't think he's good enough to play. But I mean, I'm certainly not paying even more than that.
One thing we do want to note, David Peralta, DL again. It just seems to the point where even when he's back, it just doesn't seem like we need to play him right now because he cannot stay healthy and should give a lineup bump to Wellington and Tomas here.
That is a good point. I could see them bumping Tomas up pretty far given how he's hitting. So then maybe he does become more viable on a site like FanDuel.
Mets. Any Mets bats that you like here?
All of them. Greinke sucks.
You heard it first. Hot take of the day. You're going to get it early here with the morning grind. Stack the Mets against Greinke in a GPP.
No, I mean, obviously Greinke's not a guy you try to pick on, but
no, you got to stay next to the hot take.
It was mostly a joke hot take. I wouldn't hate a Mets stack. If this was in Chase Field, I would definitely recommend Mets. In Citi Field, probably not.
One-off play. What's your thoughts on Jay Bruce as a one-off?
He's a little pricey, but I could see him as a one-off. I could maybe see Neil Walker as a one-off. I could maybe see Granderson as a one-off. I don't hate one-offs here.
Yeah, I think Jay Bruce is always a good one-off, especially now with Cespedes out of the lineup. Like, Jay Bruce has that home run upside that you want as a one-off guy.
He definitely does. Citi Field isn't a great park for lefty power, which is kind of the problem here because the guys that you want as one-offs are lefties. But I mean, it can always happen. He does have big power.
Oh, yes. New York at Boston, Rick Porcello, Luis Cervino. We don't want the pitchers here, right? It's a Red Sox-Yankees game.
Yeah, it's a Red Sox-Yankees game in Fenway. We definitely don't want the pitchers here.
Yeah, Porcello's pitched well this season. We can give him that. Like, he hasn't knocked anybody's socks off, but he's pitched well. Just don't know if this is the spot that I necessarily want to target Porcello.
No, it wouldn't be the spot for me either.
All right. Let's talk bats. We'll start with the Yankees. A-Rod, right?
A-Rod is A-Rod's one of those.
See you later.
Yeah.
We can tell who the Red Sox fan is here.
Yeah, I think we can tell.
We don't want A-Rod. We were kidding.
No, definitely not A-Rod. A-Rod's been so tilting this year because earlier in the year, like, he had such a good year last year that you're like, okay, he's gonna be fine this year. He's gonna be fine, and then it just little by little it moves along and he's not fine. And then eventually you realize I shouldn't be playing A-Rod anymore.
So what are we doing here? Ellsbury's really cheap. Brian McCann's really cheap. Mark Teixeira's really cheap. Is this a spot we could target these guys?
I don't tend to really think so because, a lot of those guys that you're looking at, like a guy like McCann, yes, he's really cheap. He's going to have the platoon advantage, but it is not the park for lefty power. Fenway kills lefty power. And so even though they're really cheap, Purcell is a pretty good pitcher. It's not a great environment for that type of skill set. And so I would kind of have trouble with a McCann or a Teixeira.
Didn't say no to Ellsbury, though.
Ellsbury fits the park a little bit better, but I still don't necessarily think it's a spot that I'm going to be using him, especially because Porcello is pretty good at preventing steals.
He's good against lefties, too. He gives up a lot of hard contact to lefties, but he does a good job of limiting the damage to lefties. So I don't really love the Yankees here. I think that those price points, I feel like those guys are going to be a little popular here. Looking at the Red Sox, though, man, we got to like David Ortiz today.
I like Ortiz, but I was actually curious before when I know he's coming on the show. I was curious to get your take on this because we record this the night before, and so we really have no idea what people are going to be thinking. But, like, do you think Boston's going to be popular today? Because I think they're going to be overrated. Like, Severino's a good pitcher.
I think they'll be popular because he's coming out of the bullpen. I know he had a long relief game, but he's still coming out of the bullpen. So what's your expectations here? 85 pitches at most?
I think that seems pretty reasonable.
You know, he's a young arm. He's 22. He's under contract with the Yankees. They're not playing for anything. They made that obvious that they're shipping everybody off. Didn't McCann clear waivers?
It wouldn't surprise me if he did.
Yeah, he's available for trade. I don't know if that means he plays still or not.
Yeah. If you pass through waivers, you can still play. It's a lot of times it's just a formality. Basically, teams throw everyone through waivers to disguise the guys that they actually want to get through waivers. So it's really not that big of a deal if you hear a name goes through. It means they can get traded, but it doesn't mean much more besides that it's a possibility.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you cleared that up for me. I hate everything about how baseball does their waiver system. If you want to trade somebody, just trade them, right? Like, why does it have to be all this like mumbo jumbo crap? Like, if you really want to trade, like, hey, we need to get rid of Brian McCann. Cleveland wants a catcher. Just trade him. Done.
I mean, hypothetically, sure.
I know it doesn't work like that. I'm just, all right, back to this game. We have to like Mookie Betts here too. Like, if there's two Red Sox that I really like, it's Mookie Betts and David Ortiz, and I'm probably on the same page as everybody in DFS today.
Yeah, I mean, those are the only two Red Sox you ever really should like because, as everyone knows, Xander Bogaerts is terrible and overrated. Not terrible, but
oh man,
super overrated. But it's interesting to see him with a normal price tag today. So maybe he becomes less overrated going forward if he's going to be priced at 4,100 on DraftKings. But when he was close to 5,000, like the same price as Betts and Ortiz, like he was a terrible play. I don't care if it worked out. I don't care if you made money playing him. He was a terrible play.
Yeah.
In cash games, at least. If you're stacking Red Sox, that's different.
Oh, yeah, you don't ever leave out any of the top three when you're stacking them, obviously. Yeah, just I don't know what to do with this game. Honestly, I don't. I feel like you might be right about it being popular, which makes me want to stay away from it. But, I think the pricing on FanDuel really helps me stay away from it. Mookie Betts, 4,400. David Ortiz, 4,400. Xander Bogaerts, 3,900. Like, I feel like the prices are going to keep me away from the Red Sox here.
Yeah, I mean, I see this being I see there being a lot of stronger plays today, especially even if Severino only goes 85. Like, I think people maybe think the Yankees bullpen is not good now that they traded Andrew Miller and Aroldis Chapman, but this is still a good bullpen. This is still one of the best bullpens in baseball. It's not like the most ridiculous bullpen we've seen in 10 years like it used to be, but it's still a really good bullpen.
Angels, Chicago Cubs, John Lackey, Jared Weaver. Any interest in these two guys?
No interest in either. Maybe Lackey as a GPP guy, but that would be the extent of that.
Yeah, if you're playing him in GPPs, you're playing him more on FanDuel where you want those 12 points for a win, right?
Yeah, and I would imagine he is going to be a strong favorite for a win today because I think the Cubs bats are doing some major damage.
Well, we're on the same page there, so we'll start with the Angels bats. Who do you like here against Lackey?
Honestly,
balls.
Yeah, I mean, Not a lot of them. You could always make a case for Trout as a one-off because he's Mike Trout, because it's a park upgrade, because Lackey allows steals. But he'd probably be the only one.
Yeah, he's always in play, right?
He really is, and especially anytime he's out of Anaheim and into a park that isn't the best pitcher's park in baseball, then he's definitely always in play.
Cubs bats here, stack them up. I'm not going to say no to any Cubs that you're going to recommend.
No, you can make a case for any of these Cubs bats. Chris Bryant's going to be elite today. He's a guy that I want to pay up for. Javier Baez, I think, is interesting because he's pretty well priced, and righty on righty isn't usually his type of matchup, especially because he'll probably be buried in the order. But this is the exact kind of pitcher you want to play Baez against. A pitch-to-contact guy that gives up home runs, and that is Weaver.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not going to say no to anything today when it comes to the Cubs bats. They're one of my top stacks on the day.
Yeah, so, I mean, we could rattle off all the names, but pretty much all the primary Cubs suspects are in play.
All right, real quick, before we move on to the next game, Cole Calhoun, 5,600 on Fantasy Draft.
That's, wow. That's a really good price.
Under 3K on DraftKings, too.
Yeah, you can maybe make a case for him. I didn't see him that low.
That'd be a price play.
Yeah, it would.
Houston at Minnesota, Michael Fiers, Hector Santiago. I still can't used to Santiago being in Minnesota.
I don't get that trade from either team's perspective. Like, Hector Santiago is a better pitcher than Nolasco, and the Angels basically traded him straight up for Nolasco. But then the Twins take this guy who just profiles absolutely terribly for their park, like horribly. This is one of the better parks in baseball for right-handed hitting, and any right-handed hitter, which is most of baseball, is going to have the platoon advantage against Santiago. So, like, he's getting crushed in two regards. Like, Houston is my top offense today. Let's not bury the lead. Houston's my top offense today for those reasons. There are a lot of really good right-handed bats in a great park for right-handers against a weak fly ball lefty. Like, Houston is just gonna crush Santiago. Oh, and then Santiago gives up a bunch of steals too. So Altuve, Correa, Springer, guys who run. Great plays in that regard also.
Well, do you have any interest in Fiers here?
Not really. I tend to avoid pitchers in Minnesota. It's not a good park for strikeouts at all. So even though I am a Fiers fan, even though the Twins do tend to strike out, I prefer to target them when they're on the road.
All right, let's talk Houston bats. You pretty much summed it up, but my second fantasy draft play, there's no reason not to play George Springer at 8K today.
I would not argue with you at all. Springer is an excellent play today. The guy that interests me, though, Jose Altuve, is finally at like a normal person price today. Like, he's under 5,000 on DraftKings for, I can't remember the last time I saw him that cheap.
Jose Altuve is not a normal person. He shouldn't be priced like a normal person.
Well, I guess that's true. But I mean, Altuve's been great this year, but he's basically been the best player in baseball that isn't Mike Trout, and he's been priced like it. But you can't pay that for him because he's not the best player in baseball that isn't Mike Trout.
All right. What's your thoughts here? More not on DraftKings or Draft, on FanDuel. Alex Bregman, if he continues to get a good lineup spot, he's cheap enough on that site that I think he's in play. So I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bregman's bat. It's finally starting to come alive. They've been hitting him second. I would imagine they're going to hit him second today against the lefty. So, yeah, I like him.
Any Minnesota bats here?
Not really.
Come on, there's one. I know there's one.
Is it Miguel Sano?
It is Sano.
Yeah, I can always make a case for Sano in GPPs, especially against a fly ball pitcher like Fiers. I don't always like him against strikeout pitchers, though, and even though I guess Fiers' strikeout rate isn't that high this year, but he has strikeout stuff. It's going up. I don't know if this is the ideal matchup for Sano, but there is always power upside.
So I'm going to throw two numbers at you. 347 WOBA, 39.6% hard contact rate. That's what Fiers is to righties this season. You just got done saying like how good this ballpark is for right-handed power.
That is true, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't like to focus too much on single year platoon splits like that, I would have to think going forward, Fiers is going to be better against righties than he is against lefties. But I mean, there's power upside here.
I'm with you. I look at a lot of 1 to 3 year data when it comes to pitchers, but this time of the season, when you're starting to notice certain trends, I feel like this is a spot where we're getting enough sample size that you can look at the 1 year numbers just to kind of try to pick up on stuff, especially in tournaments, to get that, that edge, that one-off play, that guy that's going to set you over the top.
Like Ian Desmond. Ian Desmond doesn't ever set you over the top. Ian Desmond puts up zeros and destroys your night.
Oh, one of my favorite stacks on the slate, Atlanta at Milwaukee, Tyrell Jenkins, Willie Peralta. If I had to tell you Atlanta is one of my favorite stacks on the slate, you'd probably laugh, right?
I actually wouldn't. I don't hate Atlanta today at all.
Oh, I love this spot. You want to talk about – this is a good spot. Jenkins, any interest here?
No, Jenkins is awful.
Just had to ask. He's facing Milwaukee. You never know.
Yeah, I played what's his name last night, the Atlanta guy, who is a much better pitcher than Jenkins is. But I will not recommend anyone play Jenkins today.
All right, let's talk bats. We'll start with Atlanta. I pretty much just confessed my love for Atlanta, which is, I feel like, a hot take in itself. So who do you like here for the Braves?
I like Freeman, obviously. He's their best player. He's expensive today, but he is an elite play today. He is one of the best hitters of the entire day. This is such a good matchup for him.
He finally has protection behind him. I can't stress enough how important that is, that he has a really good hitter behind him finally.
I mean, it certainly should help him, you would think, having more pitches to see. So, I mean, a park upgrade into Miller today, a weak righty in Peralta. Like, it's just this is as good as it gets, basically.
So they're going to go out and score 2 runs, and Peralta is going to throw a gem.
It is very possible.
That's usually how it works. I love this spot here. I like the Braves. They're a team that I'm going to stack here. I don't think, outside of Freeman, I don't even think I'd play Kemp as a one-off. I think Freeman would be my one-off, and I'm going to have some Braves stack here.
Yeah, that's the way I would approach it too.
Now, looking at Milwaukee, we talked about it yesterday when Siege was on the podcast. Jonathan VR, this is an elite spot for steals. Atlanta is a team to pick on because even when Recker's back there, they don't have a legit throwout catcher.
And I would agree on the catcher point, but I like the stolen base upside a lot more yesterday, where Whalen is not good at preventing steals. Jenkins, as bad as he is at everything else, is really good at preventing steals. That may not prevent a guy like VR from trying to take a base, but I liked him a lot more yesterday than I would like him today.
He has 47 steals. I'm not worried about, or 45 steals. I'm not worried about Recker or Przinsky throwing him out. He's good.
Well, all right then.
Man, I'm all about the simplicity today.
You really are. You're spot on with it.
Milwaukee, outside of VR, anything that you like here?
Not really, because on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, you kind of have to pay up for a lot of these guys. They're really expensive. So while I like Milwaukee today, I don't love them. And if you don't love them, you can't pay these prices.
I have one of my dong from the day is going to come from this game, so I'm not going to mention him here, but we'll move on to the next game, and I'll talk about him when we do some home run derby. White Sox at Kansas City. Chris Sale, Edison Volquez. Chris Sale at Kansas City. What's your thoughts?
I want nothing to do with Chris Sale. He's got his whole stupid pitch to contact thing going on this year. He's going into a park that depresses strikeouts. Even if he, doesn't allow a lot of runs to Kansas City because they're Kansas City, the strikeout upside here is so limited that you can't pay for Sale today.
And I want to note, time of first pitch, it's supposed to be 98 degrees in Kaufman today.
That's true, and I believe, it's also quite humid there, one of the most humid of the day. So all around, this is just not a good spot for Sale.
And with that being said, because of his price and matchup, like if you want to play him as a tournament play and you're making multiple teams and you just want to have a guy that has Sale's ability, I don't hate it as a tournament play, just because I do think that there's a slight possibility he could go out and just shut him down. But I don't love this spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes out, he shuts him down. He throws 8 scoreless innings, and he gets maybe 7 strikeouts because he went that long and faced that many batters. Then he's going to be fine. But that's kind of on the end of the spectrum. Like that's kind of a low probability event, which it can happen, but it's not one you're going to pay for.
Yeah, like I said, I have a little bit more tolerance than a lot of people. I'll play him in one tournament lineup tomorrow. Edinson Volquez, I don't know, man. Like, we just talked about how hot it is. I just don't think this is a good spot for him.
No, this is definitely not a good spot for him. For all the reasons I'm not very high on Sale, those are the reasons why I'm not very high on Volquez, who is a significantly worse pitcher.
All right, let's talk bats in this game. Did Jose Abreu just start juicing again? Is that what happened?
I mean,
come on. He doesn't hit a home run for a month and a half, and he hits 3 in 4 games.
That's how baseball works.
I know that's how baseball works, but I think he's juicing again. Let's just be honest.
I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say that it's variance, that this, players tend to regress. When players perform above or below the level you expect them to, eventually, especially if it's only, a couple months, they tend to start performing the way you expected them to.
It's a small sample size, obviously, but he is hitting the ball to start the month really well. And, even though he wasn't hitting for power, he was hitting these multi-hit games. So, at his price, really hot, humid day, I think he's in play here.
Yeah, I could see him being in play. The price is going up a little bit, but he could be in play.
Melky Cabrera, Adam Eaton, any interest?
No, not really. I'm not a big Melky fan. He's one of those guys who's always too expensive for what his skill set is. He doesn't do enough to be worth it. And a guy like Eaton, I think you need to play on a day where it's a really strong stolen base matchup. It's a solid one against Volquez, but it's not an elite one.
Yeah. Any bats here from White Sox that we didn't mention?
No, none that I really see that I'm super interested in.
What about the Royals against your boy Sale?
I don't like Sale today, but I'm not picking on him either. If there's a really cheap one-off play, maybe a Salvador Perez is really cheap on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, I could see a one-off like that.
Yeah, my one-off I think would be Lorenzo Cain, 6,600 on draft, righty-lefty matchup. I think he'd be the one guy that I would play as a one-off.
Yeah, I'm not a big Cain fan. The price is decent, but outfield is just so shallow. If I'm going to take a one-off in a spot like this, it's usually at a position that – did I say outfield was a shallow position? Outfield's a deep position. I usually like taking my one-offs at a shallow position like a catcher or a middle infield spot.
Cincinnati at St. Louis, Mike Leake, Brandon Finnegan. Hey, if Reed can do it, Finnegan can do it, right?
I mean, sure, in theory. I don't know if I'm going to
You're not going to. I'm not going to. Our listeners are not going to. I just wanted to make a Reed joke because he tilted me. That's all.
Yeah, I can see why he would have. Please talk me off Mike Leake. Please do it, because he's 4,500 on DraftKings, and he's going to save me all the money to spend up on bats, and I don't want to have to play Mike Leake.
I don't hate it. That's the problem. He was a guy that stood out to me on draft at 8,800. I love these cheap crappers. Give me 10 to 15 fantasy points, and I know he's not been able to do it lately, and he just got shelled by Cincinnati in his last start. So, but the thing that I think we need to note, that game was at Cincinnati. Yep. This is a completely different ball game.
This is a very different situation. Busch and Cincinnati are two completely different parks. So, I like Leake today. I like him for the price. I like him for the price because this is a Reds team. They traded away Jay Bruce. They're taking the park hit. It's not a very good offense. Leake doesn't allow steals, which is good because guys like Hamilton and maybe Cozart and Peraza, if he's in there, they like to run. And Leake's not going to let them. Maybe Hamilton will, but Leake's going to give it his darndest.
Do I need to go back to the point with VR? Hamilton's so fast he can steal off everybody.
Yeah.
But he has to get on base too. So who knows?
He has to get on base, and two, I think what gets overlooked with steals is it's not just like whether they can steal against a guy, it's whether they're going to. And yes, Hamilton could just decide I'm going to steal on Leake because I'm on base and I feel like stealing right now. But I think they tend to know which of these guys, don't get run on a lot, and so I think the chances of Hamilton actually taking off to run are a little bit lower against a guy like Leake.
Let's talk offenses. You don't want to talk Brandon Finnegan, right?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure. I didn't want to talk about Brandon Finnegan, but all right. All right, let's talk offenses here. We'll start with Cincinnati. Who do you have here against Leake?
If I'm going to take a Cincinnati bat, it's probably going to be a guy like Scott Schebler, who I'm a big fan of. He hasn't done much of anything since he took over the starting job when Jay Bruce got traded, but he's dirt cheap. It's a solid enough spot, and I think he's a good enough hitter where his talent just exceeds his price.
I feel like this is a spot you could play Adam Duvall as a one-off.
Yeah, I can get behind that too. Maybe on how expensive is he on FanDuel these days? He's
32.
How is he still so cheap on FanDuel?
All year, man. 26 home runs doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean he's a little pricey on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft, but on FanDuel, that's still a really good price for him.
Yeah, I like Duvall in the spot. Not the greatest ballpark, but I think that he's definitely in play. St. Louis bats here against Finnegan. They tilted me so much not having Jerko at the top of the lineup.
Oh my God. I was so ready to play Jerko, and he was the best punt ever yesterday, hitting second, and then he wasn't hitting second.
Yeah, I pivoted too. It was just so frustrating. Luckily, I pivoted to Travis and Utley, though, so I'm not complaining too much.
Yeah, I had Rougned Odor, who did a little bit, I guess, in the ninth inning, it looks like. But man, that Texas offense sucked today.
Oh, it happens. It happens. Piscotty, if he continues to hit in the 2 spot?
Yeah, I can see Piscotty in the 2 spot. I like him a little bit more in better hitting conditions. Like Busch Stadium isn't the best spot for it. But so he's a little pricey for me, but I don't hate it.
Anybody else here for St. Louis? Are we missing anybody?
No, I like a lot of their lefty bats more than their righty bats, and these just aren't really the spot for them.
Yeah, I'm not playing Holiday. Sorry.
No.
And I don't mind Moss in a lefty-lefty matchup in a tournament. I say that all the time.
In a tournament, I can see that.
That's gonna wrap it up. Baltimore at Oakland. Wade Miley, Zach Neal. Wade Miley's interesting, right?
I mean, not to me. Is he interesting to you?
No, I just said he's an interesting person. Look at his hair and beard.
Well, okay, he's an interesting person. Maybe not an interesting fantasy play.
There's going to be times that I feel like I'm going to target Miley. This is not one of them, right? Like when Oakland does get good, it is against lefties.
Yeah, it's against lefties. This is not the spot for Miley. It's a park that's not good for strikeouts. It's going to be a lot of righties for Oakland. I have very little interest.
Zach Neal, little to no strikeout rate against a powerful Baltimore offense. I feel like Baltimore might be really sneaky here on this late slate.
Yeah, especially if you're playing one of the smaller slates, I can definitely see that. I think there's some stronger options just because this is, such an extreme pitcher's park with the lowest temperatures of the day. So I think there's stronger spots on a full slate, but on a shorter slate, they could definitely get to Neal. There could be some value here.
Hey, don't talk me into Wade Miley.
Oh, I'm not talking you into Wade Miley by any means.
Let's talk bats in this game. We'll start with Baltimore. You're stacking this team, right? You're not going to try to one off any of these teams. You play 5 of these guys and just hope that you hit the right 5. That's how I've been playing Baltimore all year. So
yeah, I tend to. I don't know. I have no problem with one-offs from Baltimore in the right spots. I don't know if this is necessarily the right one. I like it more when they're not in Oakland. So if you are playing them today, it probably is more of a stack than as one-offs.
All right, I'll give you a one-off just because you like one-offs in Baltimore. I'm going to give you Pedro Alvarez.
I don't hate Pedro Alvarez. I mean, obviously more of a GPP play because he's buried in the order because he's kind of all or nothing with his power. But this might be a decent spot for that power.
His batted ball profile over the last few weeks is just insane. But
What does it look like?
it's really good. He's hitting the ball very, very hard.
Well then,
Yeah, just everything
hitting the
he's
ball
hitting.
hard is a way to succeed in baseball.
He's still striking out. He's Pedro Alvarez, but everything he's hitting when he's making contact is hard.
Yeah. If I was going to do a one-off here, maybe it's Chris Davis, who also hits the ball hard. Maybe not quite as much lately, but he's pretty cheap on DraftKings and Fantasy Draft.
Oakland bats here. What's your thoughts on Danny Valencia in this righty-lefty matchup?
If you're going to take an Oakland bat, again, I don't think these are great hitting conditions, but Valencia might be your guy.
He'd be my guy. I don't mind Chris Davis with a K, but
Yeah.
I like Valencia in this matchup.
Yeah, I like Valencia too.
We get some cheap value here, depending on where these guys hit for Oakland tonight. Like Eibner, he's really cheap. Smolinski's really cheap. What's the other kid's name that they have called up? Healy, right?
Yeah, Ryan Healy.
Yeah, so like you could get some value if any of these guys draw like in the top 5 of this lineup.
Yeah, I like those type of guys more for GPPs. Like they tend to get pinch hit for a good amount. Like Smolinski, I will never play in a cash game because I think he gets pinch hit for like 30% of the time. So just the value isn't there. But if he does something and the 3 at bats that he gets against the starter, then that is definitely GPP worthy.
Hey, listen, I did the cash show on Roto Grinders on Monday, and I said you had to play Grandal. So I might know this cash game stuff more than I think.
I am a big fan of Grandal, and I know you are too. I'm glad to see him doing well this year after a slow start.
All right, I'm going to need you to talk me off a ledge here. Detroit at Seattle, Daniel Norris, Wade LeBlanc. Tell me why I shouldn't play Daniel Norris here. I know it's a curveball. I know you weren't expecting that one.
I wasn't. I'm like, who's going to be on Daniel Norris today? I think you don't play him because he throws to a bad catcher, because he has a bad defense behind him, a bad bullpen supporting him, because Seattle has a lot of good lefty bats. And I think that's why. I think also he's not really that great of a pitcher.
You said Seattle has a bunch of good lefty bats. I think that plays to Norris, doesn't it?
Norris is a lefty. They have a lot of good righty bats also.
So the thing that worries me about Norris is when he got sent down in the minors, he was pitching in relief. I feel like that's the one thing that's kind of worried me here.
How deep he's going to go, or
how deep he's going to go? Like, because you made some interesting points throughout the show, and like Mike Leake is so cheap now that like that really has me thinking. But before we started this podcast, I actually really did have interest in Norris because he's just so cheap and he's facing a really left-handed heavy team.
Yeah. If you look at his game logs, I don't think he's going to have any pitch restrictions. He threw 80, 92, and 100 in his last 3 starts, with the 100 being the most recent one. So, assuming he does well, he'll probably get a decent leash here. He'll be able to go 100 pitches. I don't like his chances to do well.
All right. Wade LeBlanc, any interest there?
Very minimal. I mean, him too. Like it's not a great matchup for him. Detroit is slightly more appealing to play against these days because, they have Tyler Collins hitting second and they have Nick Castellanos on the DL now. But, Casey McGahee is in the lineup every day the past couple days.
Yes, he's back up. We talked about it yesterday.
Yeah, but lefties against Detroit are difficult. I'd be more apt to play LeBlanc if he was right-handed.
Oh, let's talk bats. We'll start with Detroit. They have this guy on Detroit. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. Miguel Cabrera, he plays first base. He's pretty good at the old baseball.
He is pretty good at baseball.
Yeah, maybe I've heard of him. It might be a stretch to talk about him, but he might be in a good spot here.
He's in a good spot here. I liked him more, like, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when his price on DraftKings was like 4,000. His price on Fantasy Draft was like 8,000. He's getting up there now, so it's not an ideal park for hitting, especially because the temperatures are pretty low here. So I mean, I like the matchup a little bit today, but I would like it more if he was more affordable.
I feel like this is a good matchup to play the home run guys. You're playing the Miguel Cabreras, you're playing the Nelson Cruz, you're playing the JD Martinez's, those type of guys.
I could definitely see those being good plays because there is definitely power upside against these pitchers. Not really cash game plays in my mind, but anytime there is power upside like that in a GPP, that's something you want to target.
If you fall into the trap like me and you play Daniel Norris today, because there's probably a good chance it happens, I'm stupid and crazy. Make sure you have a Seattle stack as a hedge team.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Let's move it on. Last game of the night. Philadelphia at Los Angeles. Kenta Maeda against Vincent Velasquez. What do we do with Velasquez before we talk about Maeda? Like, I always worry about blisters. I feel like it's such a weird thing, but after all this Rich Hill blister stuff, like, what do we do here?
Blisters are not to be messed with. Like, blisters can really mess a pitcher up, and especially since this isn't a great matchup for Velasquez in my mind. He's not a guy I'm even tempted by to begin with, so I have no interest in Velasquez today.
Maeda, you want to talk about a safe option? I think this is a spot that he's pretty safe.
Maeda is my guy today. Like, Maeda is going to be on all my teams, whether he's my SP1 or my SP2. Like, he's the guy. Even on FanDuel, I think there's a very strong case to be made for fading Scherzer for Maeda. Like, spots don't get better than this. It's an elite pitcher's park. It's one of the worst offenses in baseball that is used to playing in a great hitter's park, and they're bad there. So, like, this is an elite matchup. And for some reason, Maeda's not that expensive.
Yeah, and like he had a little bit of struggle there, middle of the season struggle, but like he's been pitching a lot better too.
Yeah, he's a guy that I like. He was pitching a little over his head to start with, then he kind of came back to earth a little bit. Now I think he's kind of settled out. He's a good pitcher, not a great one, but a good pitcher in a great matchup for this price. I'm all over it.
Your favorite pitcher is a Dodgers pitcher. Nobody would have guessed that.
Nobody would have guessed it. Just wait until Rich Hill finally comes back. Oh my God, I'm going to be touting Rich Hill all over the place.
Yeah, but like talking about blisters and like being able to grip a baseball as a guy, I pitched for 20 years. When you have that type of thing, it's so hard to throw a curveball. So like he has to wait until he's fully healthy.
Yeah, I think he's doing a bullpen session. I'm going to say today, because even though we're recording this the night before, you're going to be listening to this today. I think he throws one today, and hopefully it goes well because I really want to play some Rich Hill down the stretch.
Oh, this would be a great spot against Philly. But all right, let's talk. Anybody from Philly that you like here?
No, I love Maeda too much today. I don't think you can play anyone. Maybe Aaron Altair, just because he continues to be really cheap and because I think he's a pretty good hitter. But that would be it, and even that's probably a stretch.
What about Herrera on FanDuel at $3K?
It's too expensive. I would have a hard time with that.
Yeah, I guess especially if Grandal's catching too, right?
Yeah.
All right, so I need your help here. Every day I give out 3 fantasy draft plays. I've already given out 2 in Belt and Springer. Before we started, I looked at this and I just couldn't decide, so I need your help. Would you prefer Adrian Gonzalez or Josh Reddick as the 3rd fantasy draft play? They're almost the same exact price.
I would probably prefer Reddick.
That's kind of where I was at too. So 3rd fantasy draft play, 7,500 on draft. He's cheap on DraftKings too. This is a good spot for Reddick.
Yeah, this is a pretty good spot for Reddick for sure.
I like Gonzalez too. He's starting to swing the bat a lot better too. So I don't hate either one of those guys.
No, definitely not.
And it's another day that on FanDuel, like you can take whichever pitcher you want, stack the Dodgers, and have so much money for any bat you want because they're just so cheap again.
Yeah, I liked him more obviously against Eflin last night than Velasquez, but especially if Velasquez is maybe struggling with a blister, then they could do some damage today.
Yeah, and like I think Eflin pitched 5 innings, right? So like the bullpen early outings last night. So man, I just don't hate the Dodgers stack again tonight.
No, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of strong spots tonight, but I wouldn't hate a Dodger stack.
Yeah, all right. It's going to wrap it up. Let's play some home run derby. I was told in chat earlier today that if they made a Stevie doll, that it would be, hey, you're my guest. I'll let you hit first.
Okay. All right, so I will pick Edwin Encarnacion,
Oh, man, that's so shocking.
right?
I'm going to go Donaldson to one off you here.
Okay. I will go Chris Bryant.
I love that call. All right, time to go contrarian. Adam Duvall.
I like it. I will go Evan Gattis.
I wish you would have hit a home run Monday night. Oh, man, I'd be winning tournaments. All right, so last one. This is the guy that I mentioned. I knew you wouldn't take him. It's the Atlanta-Milwaukee game. I absolutely love this spot for Chris Carter. I might be the only one on earth that loves this spot for Carter, but small sample sizes, of course. But Jenkins has struggled with home runs to righties, and what better to play a guy that is boomer bust than Chris Carter?
Yeah, I don't dislike that call at all. I think he stands a pretty solid chance of hitting a home run today.
Don't go all in on Chris Carter, but I do think this is an excellent spot for him to hit a home run anyway. All right, at the end of the day, if you had to pick one pitcher to pick up a win, doesn't have to score the most fantasy points, and he's not named Max Scherzer, Chris Sale, or Zach Greinke, who do you have to win here? We already know the answer.
It's going to be Kenta Maeda.
Oh, man, shocking. I love Corey Seager, by the way. He just hit another home run.
Yes, did he really?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
It was one of those ones that just got over, too. Those are the best.
Oh, that is going to save my night from the horrendousness that was Texas. Thank you, Corey Seager.
See, look how fast we just chewed you up. All right. If I had to pick one pitcher to pick up a win, you take Maeda. Man, there's just so many bad pitchers on this slate. I don't think he's going to score the most fantasy points, but I do think he's an option today. I'm going to go Mike Leake.
I'm going to wind up playing Leake tonight. I know I am.
I think he's going to win, right? And people are going to be off him because he just got shelled by this team.
And because Waka was terrible last night.
Waka's not good.
No, Waka's not good. Do you remember what team were you on when Waka got called up? Like originally, like he was a prospect, he got called up, he did really well in the playoffs, and everyone was like all over Waka. And I was like, no, Waka's pretty mediocre, guys. And everyone was like throwing all kinds of shade at me about it. And I was like, no, he's really not that good. What team were you on? Were you one of these guys who was all over Waka?
I've never been on Waka.
Okay, good. There's
spots that I like Waka. Of course, everybody there's spots, but I say it all the time. I think he's bad.
Yeah, Waka's wholly mediocre.
That's going to wrap it up here for the Tuesday edition of the podcast. We'll be back, obviously, Wednesday. I have a special guest on Thursday. Seth from Roto Grinders is going to join me. We're going to talk some NFL preseason 1. So if you guys reserve some games on DraftKings, we're going to help you build your lineups for that on Thursday. So make sure you guys check that out. Derek, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Corey Seager is a god.
Well, I agree with that. I'm a big Corey Seager fan, so obviously I agree. And, real quick, the bat is half price for the rest of the season, right?
Yes, it is. Half the season, half the price.
All right, guys, make sure you guys check that out. There's so much that goes into the bat. It's just such a good place to start your research. As you're listening to the morning grind, pull up the bat and get it done. Good luck in your contest tonight, and we'll see you again tomorrow.